Okay, everybody, today we are going to create a snowman in a winter wonderland scene. This is going to be a greeting card that you will use to send out to family, friends, teachers, whoever you want to send it to. The first thing that we are going to start with, in your new Photoshop document, I want you to change your height and your width. First of all, let's change our measurement size to inches. And we want to change the width to 7 inches and the height to 5 inches. This is going to be emailed out, so the resolution can be 72 ppi, and we're going to leave it on a white background. We're going to go ahead and from here press OK. And so the next thing is I'm going to Control-0 to make my screen fit up there better. For whatever reason, my keyboard command didn't work, so I'm going to do fit on screen this way. Okay, we're going to be working with our pen tool and our layers panel, so I want to make sure that I see both of those open and easily available. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Window, I make sure that Layers is selected, and I want to make sure that Paths is available to see. I'm going to move mine right here. Okay, and so the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to double click on our foreground color. And today I'm going to give you a hex number. The hex number is right down below the RGB, and it is just a one string of numbers and letters that represent the entire color. The hex color for this is 0D004C. That's going to be a dark blue. We're going to press OK. And then the next thing I want to do is I'm going to open my swatches panel, and I'm going to drag this down so you guys can see. In the swatches panel, you have a bunch of folders that have presets in it. You'll notice that this top line is your most frequently or most recently used colors, and so the blue color that we created is right here. And what I want to do is I'm going to click on the plus at the bottom of my swatches panel, and I'm going to name this color. So I'm going to call it Midnight Blue and press OK. Now I'm back. I can close that swatch panel out for just a bit. I'm going back to my layers panel. I'm going to use Alt Backspace is my key command. And let's see why Alt Backspace is not working. And if Alt Backspace doesn't work for whatever reason, you can always use your paint bucket to fill that in with the foreground color that you just created. Now we want to switch to our default foreground background color, so I'm going to press the letter D on my keyboard, and then I want to switch it so that white is the foreground color, so I'm going to press the letter X on the keyboard. I'm going to get my pen tool, so you could use the letter P for your pen tool. And when you're working in Photoshop, if we're working on a canvas, it doesn't matter if we draw something outside of the canvas area, it won't show up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start in the lower left corner outside of my canvas. I'm going to go up about halfway, and I'm going to click to get a straight line. Then what I'm going to do is I'm making a snowy hill. So I'm just going to click and kind of drag downward to make the top bump of the hill, and then I'm going to click and kind of go upward a little bit. I'm going to go off canvas, and then I'm going to come back and touch the original anchor point. What that's going to do, guys, is it's going to cause that to now be a shape and not a line. Remember, a line has a beginning and ending, and a shape is a closed path that I can fill in. Now, I want to create a new layer to apply this path to. I'm going to call this layer Snow. Let's double click on it. I'm going to call it Snow Back. And with Snowback layer selected and my path is selected, I'm going to use the Fill option at the bottom of my layers or my paths panel, and I'm going to choose Fill. Now what I want to do, I'm going to go back to my layers panel. I'm going to lower this opacity to 75%, and so it's going to make my white color kind of see-through. It's going to make it appear to be kind of a lighter blue color. Now I'm going to click off of that work path so it's no longer selected. I'm going to get a new layer. We're going to rename this layer, and I'm going to call it Snow Front. Okay, and I'm going back to my pen tool, and this time I'm going to start a little bit lower than the original layer, and I'm going to make a different shaped heel. It's really up to you on how you make these heels. We really don't want to go higher than halfway up the screen. So you'll notice that here I actually did not touch back to close out that panel because I can see that it didn't overlap. So I'm going to click right there, And now I have a shape that I can fill in. I'm going to fill it in with white, and this time I'm not going to adjust the opacity of that layer so it looks like I've got a brighter front area than I do in the back. Okay, I'm going to click outside of my work path so that it is not selected, and I'm going to get a new layer. I'm going to rename this layer Tree. And so what I'm going to do is with the pen tool, I'm going to create a spiral. Think of it like a slinky or a spring. What we want to do is we want to make the spiral go outward so it's wider at the bottom because we're making kind of a spring, Christmas tree shaped spring. So I'm going to click. Now I want this side to kind of bend outward, so I'm going to click and pull downward. Now every time that I work on the left side of this tree, I'm always going to go downward. When I go to the right side, I'm going to always pull upward. If you only click, it's going to make a sharp point, so you want to pull up and down on the sides respectively. So the left side I pull down, right side I go up, and each time that I make an anchor point, I'm going to go out a little bit further. If I want to make the base of the tree a little bit bigger loops, then I would just extend the dragging Bezier curves out. Now I'm going to mess up on this just a little bit so you guys can understand that this does not have to be a perfect tree at first. Okay, I've made kind of an ugly tree. It got worse as we went down, but I'm still on the pen tool. I can hold down my control key. Control is our shortcut that gets the direct selection, and I can adjust my handles and my anchor points accordingly so that it makes more of a correct tree shape. Now if I've made a loop too big, I just go back and I adjust that Bezier handle. And so I'm going to create something that looks something like this. Now, one of the things that a lot of kids had trouble with when we did this in class is as they created their path, if they started too close to the edge, their path went off stage or off canvas. That's okay. Just use your path selection tool and bring it back to the side of the canvas so everything is visible. Next, we want to choose a Christmas shade of green. So I'm going to double click on my foreground color. And on this one, let's see, where are we at? I'm going to choose, sorry about that, I'm going to choose the hex number of 005826. That's a green color. I'm going to press OK. And while I'm at it, I'm going to create a swatch for this. So with my swatch panel open, I'm going to add, and I'm going to call this tree green. And I'm going to press OK. Now, I could just apply a regular brush to this, but we want to be a little bit fancier with what we're going to do. So I'm going to come up to my brush selector, or my brush tool, and I'm going to go to the brush picker. And I want to make sure that I am using legacy brushes. So if you are scrolling through here and you don't see legacy brushes pop up right away, we can click on the little gear, go down to legacy brushes. You may get a message that looks like this. Just hit OK if it does. And from legacy brushes, I'm going to scroll down. Mine says number 4 on it because I've actually downloaded 4 sets of legacy brushes. I'm going to open this up. Find the folder inside called calligraphic brushes. These are like calligraphy pens. So I'm going to click on that and I'm going to open it up. Let's make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. And when I'm in my calligraphic brushes, you'll see that you have different shaped brushes. Some will be more oval, some will be flat. And so really, honestly, the size is going to depend on how big your tree is in relation to your canvas. So what I suggest is starting with the oval 20, and I suggest coming over here and choosing to make sure that we're on that tree layer, and let's stroke the path. And I notice that that obviously is way too big for this path that we have, so I'm going to Control Z that. I'm going to go back to my brush picker. You could try 10. I believe 10 is still going to be a little bit too big, so I'm going to Control Z that back, and I'm going to use my bracket keys and drop it down to about a 7. And then now when I stroke that path, it's going to create kind of a slanted look. If you want more of a flat calligraphy look, you can use the flat brush. and we can stroke, and it's going to give a little bit more of a pointed edge. Either one, the flat or the oval, is fine. It doesn't matter. So we're going to click outside of our work path in our paths panel so that we deselect that path. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my layers panel, and I am going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call it snow base. Okay, and this may be a little bit new for us. So what we're going to do is we want to go over and get our ellipse tool. Make sure you're using your ellipse tool and not your elliptical marquee. And so from here, I'm in my ellipse tool. I have to make sure that path is selected. If you don't have path selected, your snowman will not work correctly. So I have path selected, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a circle. If I want it to be, let's undo that. If I want it to be a perfect circle, I'm going to hold down Shift, and it will have perfect measurements. Now I want to get my pen tool because this circle that we made is created out of paths, and I'm going to create 2 extra anchor points that are down here on the bottom of that path, and I'm going to use my Control key and kind of stretch these out to make the bottom side of this circle a little bit more flat. A new skill that we're going to learn is Control Enter. When we Control Enter, it's going to convert your path into a selection or into a marquee, so you're going to see marching ants. Now I want to get my default colors back up, so I'm going to press the D key on my keyboard, and I want to switch to the gradient tool, which is over here on my toolbar. I can use the letter D to get gradient to pop up. Now, when I have my gradients, that should be like that. When I have my gradients, I can choose between linear and radial. And I want to choose radial gradient, which means that my color will start in the inside of the circle and bleed outward. But I obviously don't want a black and white snowball. So what I want to do is I'm going to click inside this gradient picker, and it's going to pull up a gradient editor that looks, whoops, that's really big. That's really big. Oh, things never work out when you're trying to video. That's okay. So I got my gradient picker. It's usually not this big. And what I'm going to do is down here at the bottom, I'm going to click on the black color stop. So I click on this black color stop. Let's see. 2 clicks. And I'm going to get a color picker tab that's going to pop up. And in my color picker, I want to choose a shade of light blue. So I'm going to give you the hex number. It is E0, E0, F as in Frank, B as in boy. It's going to be kind of a light blue shade, and I'm going to press OK. Now when I do that, my gradient's going to look like this. This tells me that wherever I start drawing the gradient will be this color. Where I finish the gradient will be white. So I'm going to press OK. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if I did it right now, my circle would start with blue and end with white. And that looks kind of unusual, especially if I'm going to Control H so you guys can see what happens. Your snowball kind of disappears. So what we're going to do, we're going to Control Z that. I want to reverse this radial gradient. So what that means is now my color stop, even though my color stop over here is white, it is going to actually start drawing with white and end in blue. So I'm going to click in the center of my snowball and drag outward. And so now the inside of my snowball is white, the outer edge is blue. We are going to repeat that step again, getting a new layer. And we're going to get another ellipse tool. I'm going to click outside of my work path, and I'm going to Control D to deselect. And this time I'm going to hold down Shift and get my path there. Well, that's way off. So what I can do is I can kind of shove this over here. Again, I'm going to use the pen tool, maybe add a couple of anchor points and use the Control key, because in a true snowman, your circles would not be perfect. Also, if you need to make it a little bit more narrow, you can. Your middle part should not be as big as the base. So mine's going to kind of end up, it actually looks a little bit more square. So let's pull this back out. This is just kind of playing with it when you're using your pen tool and your anchor points with the Control key. It's kind of like molding Play-Doh. I'm going to press Control Enter again. That makes a selection. And I want to do like snow middle, middle for my layers panel. And so because my selection is already made and I've already edited that gradient, all I have to do is come back up here and apply that gradient again. Now we're going to repeat this same step one more time. This one is going to be for his head, snow head. And I go back to my ellipse tool. The reason that we're using the ellipse instead of the elliptical marquee is so that we can have a little bit better control over the anchor points. So I'm going to deselect that middle snowball. I'm using my pen tool. Again, just, whoops, let's do this. I'm going to add some more anchor points. I'm going to do control. You'll notice that this time my anchor points weren't exactly directly across from each other, and that's okay because I want it to be perfect. I don't want it to be perfect. I'm going to press control enter. It gives me a selection. I'm going to go back to my gradient. I click in the inside center of the circle and I drag outward. Okay, so we're going to deselect. You just made a successful snowman. Okay, the next thing that we want to do is we are going to create a hat. So I'm going to get a new layer. You're really going to be much happier if you create a bunch of different layers for your objects. I'm going to call this one hat. And so for this particular instance, you could use your rectangular marquee tool and draw a rectangle and another rectangle if you want to, or you can use the pen tool. I think in this one, because I want to go really quickly, I'm going to draw, this is going to be the top part of his hat. I'm going to fill it in with black, and then I'm going to make a thinner rectangle still on the same side or same layer, and I'm going to alt backspace and fill that in with black as well. Now if I want to kind of make some adjustments to this hat option, I'm going to deselect, but I want to select the whole layer. So if I hold down control and I click on the thumbnail, notice that it selects everything that is on that layer. From here I can control T, and if I want to kind of warp my image, I can right click and choose warp, and then I can drag these nodes out. It doesn't give us quite the same control you would get if you were working with the pen tool, but still we get kind of a neat effect. I can press my check mark if I like it. If I want to go back and maybe tilt it just a tad, I can do that. We just want to make sure that it's fitting nicely on his head. If I made it too small or too large, I can resize that as well. I'm going to press enter to get outside of that bounding box, and then I'm going to press control D to deselect. Now, the next thing that we're going to do, we're going to create another layer, and I'm going to call this snowman swag. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my pen tool, and I'm going to create a scarf. So I'm going to draw like here. Now I want to break this handle so that my next thing is not going to necessarily be curved. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and I click on that anchor point. I'm going to come here and kind of bend this out here and bend that way. Now I'm going to fill this in. Let's see what color. Let's go make. Let's pick a swatch. I'm going to do red for this one. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill in this red scarf. Now a scarf is going to have kind of the tail that sticks out. So I'm going to kind of draw the edge of the scarf that would stick out. And again, fill that in with red. And we could continue working on the different scarves and stuff like that to make that a little bit more decorative. I would probably add a knot there. Now the next thing that we need to do is we got to go back and click on the hat, and we need to make some arms coming out. And the easiest way to do stick arms is to use your pen tool. So I'm going to create another layer. It's going to be right above the hat, and on this layer I'm going to call it arms. And so in the arms layer I'm going to make my swatch green, or sorry, brown. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw kind of some imperfect stick arms. Remember that branches aren't always going to be perfect. So I close that up. I'm going to fill this in. Hopefully I like what that looks like. I'm going to go to the other side. It's okay that I'm going to cross over the scarf because this layer is actually below the scarf, and so it won't show up on top in a moment. Do like that. And so then again I'm going to fill in the arms. Now the next thing that we're going to do, we're going to go back to our snowman swag. If you want to create a whole new layer for his face, that's completely fine. My suggestion is to use either the elliptical marquee or the ellipse tool. I think of this time I'm just going to use the elliptical marquee to go quickly. And I want to get my default colors, and I'm going to give him one eye. I'm going to Alt backspace to fill it in. I'm going to use my Move tool with my Alt keyboard command to get a perfect copy of this eyeball. I'm going to deselect. I'm going to use the Pen tool to draw a carrot. The carrot's going to be not quite so perfect, so it's okay if it, it's going to look a little bit off. I'm going to get orange, and I'm going to fill that in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to decorate this snowman. When I get the snowman all created, we're going to pretend that this one's already done start to finish, and I will add a finished copy at the end so you guys can see it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of the layers that involved the snowman. And I'm going to create them and put them in a group folder. So you can use the keyboard command Control-G, or we can use the folder. So I'm going to click on the folder right here, and I am going to call this snowman. Okay, I'm going to go back and click on the tree layer. Let's click on the snow front layer. I think that's going to be better. I'm going to get my type tool, and with my type tool, I probably don't want it to be orange. I think I want to make my type actually white, so I'm going to press OK here, and I'm going to find a font that looks kind of seasonal. I can change fonts later. I'm going to just stick right here. And I'm going to type in, ooh, that's really big, Seasons Greetings. Now, if your font's really large like mine is, that's okay. We're going to select it and select it, get in an editing mode, and I can drop it way, way down. Now, for whatever reason, the font that I chose is really, really pixelated right now. I could change that font later to make it something that's a little bit nicer looking. My fonts all right now are really edgy, and so if I notice that I need to probably take it off of none for my anti-alias, and you can choose sharp, crisp, strong. What that does is it just kind of is blending the pixels. Smooth may be the best one. Let's see what some of these look like. So I'm going to make this big, Seasons Greetings. I'm probably going to apply some layer styles to this. Drop shadow would look nice. I don't want my shadow to be that far away from my words. Now your settings may change a little bit depending on what size font you used. I'm going to do Seasons Greetings like that. Because I am recording a video right now, my settings are a little bit weird, so it is showing a little bit more pixelated than it should. And then I would do, I'd probably have my name down here. Now the last thing that we're going to do, we're going to go down to our background layer and we're going to unlock it. And we are going to make some cool changes to this. I want to choose my dodge tool. So the dodge tool, the keyboard command to get that quickly is the letter O. The dodge tool is going to make things lighter, and what I want to do is I want to choose a 250 pixel brush. That's really large, and I want the hardness to be 100, so it has a really hard edge. This is the size of my brush saw. It's really big. I want to drop the exposure down to 25, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click once or twice in the background. Now, you'll see that as I clicked, I did it a couple of times, and so it's making some big like circles. And so what this does is it creates what we call a bokeh effect. And where the circles overlap, you'll see that the color gets lighter. And so occasionally go in, make 3 or 4 circles. Let me move my layers panel over so you guys can see a little bit. And you want to change your brush size so that it doesn't look the same. This is called bokeh effect if you're in photography. And then the last thing I want to do, I'm going to get a new layer. I'm going to call this one Snow. I'm going to make sure that my foreground color is absolutely white. If it's a perfect white, it'll be all 255s or all Fs in your hex number. I'm going to drop my brush size down to 2 pixels, still in a hard round brush, and all I'm going to do, make sure my work paths aren't good, is I am going to, oops, brush, drop this back down. Sorry, see I messed up. General brushes, get a hard round brush, change it to 2 pixels, make it hard. And so what I'm going, why did it not like that? And so I'm just going to click some dots across my screen that to make it appear like it is snowing. And so if I want the snow to appear above everything, I can always move it up above so it goes in front of the tree and on top of the snowman. I have to move it like that. I actually put the snow layer in the snowman just then. Let's move it above that. There we go. And so you're just going to put in some dots occasionally. If you want the dots to be brighter, you double click more often. Otherwise, single clicks here. And then the last thing that I want you guys to do is add your name in the lower corner of this. Now, don't forget, you're going to have some different decorations added to your snowman and your name. When you get this finished, you're going to save it as your name _ greeting card 1. I want you to save it as a PSD so that you are keeping the layers. And then I also want you to export it again as a PNG. We're going to be sharing this with our friends and family, and if you forget to save it as a PNG, they won't be able to open it up. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this lesson and have a great day.